Good afternoon, everyone. So we are here today for about the fourth ImproveCamp. That's typical me. So I'd like to introduce Kevin to the stage. So Kevin, if you just turn your mic and camera on, and you will appear. So
hello.
So Kevin is managing director of Sard JV, and we met at an NHS hack day, and we've had various interactions throughout the year after that, and we've done podcasts together. But what I wanted to get you here for, Kevin, really is because I'm so impressed with the stuff you're doing in the NHS with open source. I'm so impressed with your approach, your vision, your drive to actually make things change and change the way software and services are delivered into public sector organizations. And I also thought, as we've discussed, that this model isn't just a model that works for the NHS, it's a model that actually really works for the whole public sector, and to be fair, private sector too, if they got on board. So I'm really, really delighted to have you here, and the format is obviously you're going to do a short presentation, we're going to do a Q&A. We'll get the video out afterwards, and I'm going to disappear. I'm going to be here all the time. Obviously, I'll turn my camera and mic on if you have any problems. I don't know whether you want to share your screen now and then maybe do an introduction that makes sense rather than my garbled kind of.
Made sense to me.
Okay, mate. Well, that's cool. If you want to fire up your screen, your presentation.
Let's see if I get the right one. Hang on, presenter view. No, that one. Is that right? Can you see that? I should change the slide really, but these two things are the same. So yeah, should I crack into it?
Absolutely, mate. I'm going to disappear and I'll leave you to it.
All right. Hello. So I'm Kevin Monk. I'm the managing director of Sard JV. The title of this slide says a plan to execute the NHS Tech Vision. The reason it says that is that actually the plan to execute the NHS Tech Vision is essentially to bring open source to the NHS. But as Andy says, I think it's got wider applications to local government and actually beyond our seas as well, and going off into the continent and everywhere else that has these same issues. So I have borrowed some slides from a presentation I gave earlier. Sorry about that, but I didn't know I was doing this until a couple of days ago. So I've just jumped on this. Where we come from is important to discuss, because we were actually born out of the NHS. I was talking to somebody down the pub. They were having some problems in the trust that they worked in. I was drunkenly talking to them, having a beer, and they said to me, look, I'm trying to deal with these data problems at work, and we discussed them. And eventually the next week the guy phones me up and he says, look, actually, can you come to my work and just talk to my boss and show us what you're doing? And so we did. And what happened was I found an NHS trust that was basically involved in some level of piracy at Oxley's NHS trust. There was a guy called Phil Bottle there, who I consider to be my business husband, and is the co-founder of the company. And he was doing things he probably shouldn't have been doing in an NHS trust. He was not using the systems that he was supposed to be using. He dumped off Oracle Learning Management System, which is all across the NHS, and started using a open source Moodle alternative. And I thought, this guy's great. He's my kind of person. He cares more about getting the right things done than he cares getting the things done he needs to do than he cares about sort of being seen to be using the right systems and things like that. And so we started building bits of software for him and his trust. And And then it turned into this fantastic working relationship, really, where we were building all of these tools inside this NHS trust. Number of years passed, and we worked on a specific project. And the medical director there said to me, look, this is a great project. Why don't we form a joint venture company together? So we formed a joint venture company. The company Sard is half owned. The full name of it is Sard JV Limited. The JV stands for joint venture. So it was half owned by the NHS and half owned by Mango Swiss, which is the software company that founded it. And yeah, the rest is history. And we've been running that for 10 years now, and it's been a fantastic success. Profitable, bootstrap funded. We don't have any shareholders. We don't have any. Well, we do have shareholders, but we don't have any shareholders breathing down our neck and asking us to behave in a certain way. So it's really a kind of liberating organization to work for. We've had big commercial success. All of our systems are used up and down the country. They're used up in Newcastle. They're used in Guy's and St Thomas's, King's, Imperial, Oxford Uni, etc. So that's been great. But as the years have gone on, I've been starting to think that we need to work out how we're going to actually turn the NHS around in terms of its innovation and where it goes from here, because the normal route for a company like us is to be sold or consumed into the Borg, and actually I don't really want that for our business. I want us to carry on doing what we're doing. I like us having our dent in the universe. I like us being a company that just sort of gets on with its technical ideas and implements them and goes out and sells them. So how do we make it a nicer environment in which we exist? And I started to realize that actually the NHS tech vision is also the vision of our company. So let me just go to, I'll change the slide. There we go. There he is, everyone's favorite. No, I quite liked his grinning arrival on the scene of the NHS, in the sense that he actually comes from a tech background himself. And when he became the Secretary of State for Health, he launched his tech vision and said it's to build the most advanced health and care system in the world, and outdated and obstructive NHS IT systems will become a thing of the past. And I thought, great, that's music to my ears. That's exactly what I want to happen. So yeah, that's great. Let's get on with it. But of course, it's never as simple as that, is it? Because as we all know, it's inspiring to hear visions of the future and what we can do and what we need, but to make it happen, that's a different challenge. This is Professor Margan Annestad from the University of Oslo talking at the International eHealth Workshop in Bologna. She has been studying how you basically get a revolution in technology in large public sector organizations. And she studied essentially 2 projects, and what she focused on was the implementation of those strategies. So yeah, big visions, all great, but how do you actually get them to happen, specifically when you've got large, big interoperable networks as you do in hospitals? Well, it's a great video. I won't show it all here, but there were 2 projects essentially that she covered. One was the BEPR initiative. They're both in Denmark. So, and the other one was called the SEP, which was like a patient data extraction service. And the 2 projects couldn't be more different. One of them failed, one of them succeeded in a huge way. And the first one, the BEPR initiative, it had these kind of attributes. It was managed by the Board of Health. It was trying to impose this big national standard. It had a big bang switch on date. So the benefits of the system were kind of in the future. Do all this work now, and in 2 years' time, we will receive all the benefit that comes from that system being changed. So it had that kind of big bang switch on mentality. It had multiple collaborators, like every hospital, every GP surgery, all trying to build this system, and all of the vendors and all of the suppliers involved, and trying to coordinate them and create a national standard. The second project couldn't be more different. It was developed between two hospitals that had an existing practical problem, and there were small pilots, and it emerged from the ground up. Well, what happened to them? The BEPR initiative went on for years and years and years, spent a huge amount of money, had a massive political backing, and sure enough, in 2007, sort of 5 years into the project, I think it was, Deloitte did an independent review of it and said, failure. The vendors are not engaged with this, and you're not receiving the benefits of it, and it was squashed. But it was a slow motion car crash by all accounts. There were the vendors all the way through it were saying, no, this is starting to go the wrong way. They started to lose faith in the project. Sunhead's DK couldn't be more different, because it emerged from the bottom up. Within months of them starting the program, the hospitals didn't want to give up that system. They loved it so much, because it had emerged from the bottom up. It was solving an immediate problem from day one. It was starting to help them overcome the issues they were facing. So a completely different approach and different attitude. So we know how to have a vision, and we can agree that a vision is great. And we know how to execute a vision, and we know what works in terms of executing a vision. It's essentially bottom up. Don't go for top down. Don't try and collaborate. Don't try and have multiple agents all trying to work on some big, huge project. But try and get things emerging from the ground up with small numbers of agents, a small number of people on small pilots, and let that flourish from the bottom up. But that does still give us a problem, because how do you, as a central organization, create emergent systems? Like, the two things do not go together, right? To have something that is coming from, I don't know, one or two people in a hospital going, I really need that data, or I really need to share that thing. How do you make that happen from the top? Because you can't kind of force these little natural small experiments happening at the bottom. So the answer that we believe is that you design for emergence, that you change the culture, that if you set up the correct culture for an environment, then those emergent properties will start to exist. To give you an example, there was a guy who used to run the pub called the Grape and Grain in Crystal Palace, and it was a fantastic pub. He was a friend of mine. But when he took over the pub, it was one of the most awful places you could find. It was really rough. Every night was fight night. It was massive big punch-ups, and it just simply wasn't a very nice place to be. It changed his name, changed it to the Grape and Grain, but he had to essentially change the culture of that environment. It wasn't a case of just what didn't he do in terms of encouraging that culture or change from the ground up? Well, what he didn't do is he didn't write a list of all the things that he wanted his regulars and force these attributes on his current denizens. It wasn't like, I want to turn this into a hipster pub, therefore everyone who comes in here must have a beard and be wearing sandals in the summer. It didn't take that sort of approach. It didn't drag people off the street who had the attributes that he wanted and pull them in either. He didn't force them into this scenario. And he didn't ask the current sort of reprobate regulars what they thought he should do. So what he did was he changed the culture of the environment, and that started to encourage in the sort of people that he wanted, because it seemed like the right environment for that to flourish. So that's our approach really to tech innovation, is to create the right environment for that to start to emerge in the first place, to create the sort of second project from Professor Mark and Anastad, where you create the right culture, and then those sort of bottom-up emergent projects start to come to fruition. Well, when you're changing a pub, perhaps you change the paint, Perhaps you change the environment, perhaps you change the food, perhaps you start doing live music nights and things like this. But how do you change the culture of a tech environment? Well, that's where I think open source really starts to come into play, because I think that want to change the culture of tech. We've come up with what we believe are some execution essentials for changing the culture and creating a sort of environment where these projects will start to flourish. I won't go into them all in detail. I'd love to talk through them with everyone at some point, but you'll see one of the big ones over here is transparency, open source, public money, public code, open finances, open to feedback, an open community, open management. You'll see a lot of open here. Design for emergence is obviously one of the key ones. Low friction user engagement. So making sure that you have good chat systems, that your users can feed back to you rapidly any problems that they're having with the system. And as I mentioned, transparency. So open source, open communities, open management, open finances. Let us be able to see where you're spending that money and how. We have a wide group of products that we intend to push into this open source model. Some of them, such as rostering and staff index management, are probably some of the key ones that are more applicable to local government services. Here's one of our rostering solutions that we're hoping to push out into an open source model. Obviously, this is actually an AI, narrow purpose AI system that works out resource optimization. So actually, it's not just e-rostering. You can use this to optimize any resource. Second one is around something called the electronic staff record system in the NHS. So we've built an open source GitHub wrapper that sits around this and provides an API. So there's a way to interface this. This is all on GitHub's, all the source code is on GitHub. And perhaps just to sort of finish off, one of the things that I really love about this project is that the last person to commit any code to this was 6 days ago, a guy called Alex Rudel. And Alex is a contractor that's been working with us on this project. But what's interesting is he hasn't actually been working with us for the last few months. So why is he committing code 6 days ago? Because he hasn't been working with us since Christmas. Well, the truth is that Alex said to me, look, actually, I've got a couple of weeks spare. I really believe in you, and I really believe in this project, and I really believe what you're trying to do to improve things. So I'm happy to just come and work on stuff. And that gets me to my favorite and final essential, which is that every community like this needs to have joy and motivation, autonomy, mastery, purpose, community, and fun. That people need to feel like the projects they're working on are achieving some bigger vision. They need to feel like they're getting good at it. They want to feel like they have some autonomy to come and bring their own ideas to it. They want to feel like they're part of a community. And they also want to feel like it's a fun place to be. And actually, sometimes with tech projects, that's one of the things that really seems to be missing, is that we concentrate on the tech and forget about building the actual community that comes along with that. And I think there are so many people out there, both in local government and in the health sector, who really, really, really want this to happen. They really want an open source community to emerge. And what we're trying to do is bring us all together and try and build that community together. And I'm going to leave you with probably one of the weirdest parts of any of my presentations, which is Xanadu. If you've ever seen Xanadu, I'm showing you this because I think this funny thing about watching this Xanadu video is that when you start to see people joining in and enjoying themselves and having fun, it's kind of, it just drags you in, and you want to be a part of it too. So I implore everyone to watch this video and see if they feel like they just want to join in with it. I don't know if you can see this. If not, go and watch it on your own.
It's lagging a little bit there, mate. I can probably get it from YouTube.
Yeah,
play it. Give me 2 seconds. I will just find it on YouTube.
that's cool. We don't have to watch the whole of Xanadu, don't worry. The point is that when when people are having fun, when it looks like a cool place to be, they really do start to join in and get involved in that community. And that's kind of it, really.
Mate.
That's a weird one, right?
Yeah, I
probably lots.
I absolutely love that model that you've created there, and you know, as Simon Wardley would always say, all models are wrong, but you know, that doesn't mean they're not valid. You know, they have a real value in bringing people together. But I mean, I was please do raise your hand with any questions. Joe's got one there, so I'm just going to invite Joe up to the stage. Yeah. Do you know, when you talk, mate, it's always this stuff about belief and fun, and it's all those things that I've experienced. You know, I was a contractor into local government. You were always taking on a project that had gone south already because, you know, they gave it a go with their own people, so then they get someone else in to try and rescue it. And the way you rescue it is by getting people together around the vision and actually creating an environment that's safe and it's fun and people have some vested interest in delivering. And funny enough, people thrive in that environment. It's just something else. Sorry, but Joe, please do ask your question.
My question is to Kevin. Kevin, have you seen the dancing guy video?
Yes. The Simon Sinek one.
I think that might be slightly better to get the point over than Xanadu in terms of future pitches, because you are trying to create a social movement here. And I think that dancing guy video actually might tell the story a little more pointedly than Xanadu. And I just wondered if you'd seen it.
Yeah, it's Simon Sinek, I think, isn't it?
I can't remember.
Where the guy starts dancing on the hillside.
Yeah, he's dancing on his own at a festival, and he gets one follower, and then it takes off.
Yeah, I definitely feel like that guy sometimes, because I will just keep going. But I was talking to Phil about that guy. But one of the interesting things about him is, I think, had people not joined in with him, I think he would have kept on dancing anyway. Don't you?
I think he probably would. But I think that willingness to make a fool of yourself is something that I've taught to my children. I used to bribe them to pretend to be a chicken in the high street because I feel that the ability to make a complete fool of yourself in public is wonderful.
And making a movement,
that's it.
Then let's watch a movement
this is a guy.
To finish in under 3 minutes and dissect some lessons. First, of course, a leader needs the guts to stand alone and look ridiculous. But what he's doing is so simple, it's almost instructional. This is key. You must be easy to follow. Now here comes the first follower with a crucial role. He publicly shows everyone else how to follow. Notice how the leader embraces him as an equal. So it's not about the leader anymore. It's about them, plural. Notice how he's calling to his friends to join in. So it takes guts to be a first follower. You stand out and you brave ridicule yourself. Being a first follower is an underappreciated form of leadership. The first follower transforms a lone nut into a leader. If the leader is the flint, the first follower is the spark that really makes the fire. Now here's the second follower. This is a turning point. It's proof the first has done well. Now it's not a lone nut and it's not two nuts. 3 is a crowd and a crowd is news. A movement must be public. Make sure outsiders see more than just the leader. Everyone needs to see the followers because new followers emulate followers, not the leader. Now here come 2 more people, then 3 more immediately. Now we've got momentum. This is the tipping point, and now we have a movement. As more people jump in, it's no longer risky. If they were on the fence before, there's no reason not to join in now. They won't stand out, they won't be ridiculed, and they will be part of the in crowd if they hurry. And over the next minute, you'll see the rest who prefer to stay part of the crowd, because eventually they'd be ridiculed for not joining. And ladies and gentlemen, that is how a movement is made. So let's recap what we've learned. If you are a version of the shirtless dancing guy, all alone, remember the importance of nurturing your first few followers as equals, making everything clearly about the movement, not you. Be public, be easy to follow. But the biggest lesson here, did you catch it? Leadership is overglorified. Yes, it started with the shirtless guy, and he'll get all the credit, but you saw what really happened. It was the first follower that transformed a lone nut into a leader. There's no movement without the first follower. See, we're told that we all need to be leaders, but that would be really ineffective. The best way to make a movement, if you really care, is to courageously follow and show others how to follow. When you find a lone nut doing something great, have the guts to be the first person to stand up and join in.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. That's cool.
That's a wrap.
That's it. Yeah, you're right. You're so right, Joe. That's better than Xanadu. But actually, let me model one of the essentials on here. Like, basically, if this was open source itself, pull request accepted, because I think you're right. That's a better video, and that's what this whole thing should be about: is bringing people's ideas in and changing and adapting. In fact, that whole execution essentials concept, I really encourage people to contribute.
I love that, Kevin. I absolutely love that periodic table of the essentials, and that it includes fun and the soft stuff, which is, for 15 years we've forgotten that stuff in the NHS, in the centre. You know, it's a joyless experience for most of the people who work there, to be honest, and that's got to change.
Mm.
And the other thing that I'd say is the people that work there are amazing.
Yeah.
You know, so dedicated, so committed to the big picture vision of delivering excellent health service, you know, free at the point of delivery. The other thing that struck me on that video is, and it is something that's backed up statistically, but how few people it took to make a movement.
Yeah.
You know, you got to about 5 and all of a sudden, whoosh, you know.
Well, it certainly
everyone's
feels
in.
like on this project, because I really, I feel like people are starting to get behind it, and we're up to, you know, 5 or 6 crazy dancers, I would say. You know, there are people who are really starting to join in with this process, and you know, here comes John. John's a big culture man as well, aren't you? So, you know, I think people get it, and if we can start to build that dance up with people in local government as well, and people outside of necessarily the NHS, particularly because some of the projects we're trying to pick, the Staff Master Index thing is about how large organizations know who works for them, which I know we had a chat about this, didn't we, last week, Andy? Like, it was like, how do you make a HR director sort of go pasty white? You just ask them how many people they employ, and they'll go, because it's incredible. But actually, once you get to a certain organization, even our company, people say, how many people do you employ? I go, surprisingly difficult to keep tabs on.
And you will have about 5 different answers depending on the data set you go to.
Yeah.
You know, is it your employee database, or is it your departmental records, or is it, you know, there's all, I've done many office rationalizations, and that very question is so hard to answer. Sorry, John, you had a question. And you're on mute, mate, or your mic's not working.
Hello, am I all right now?
Yeah, you bang on, mate.
Cool. Thank you ever so much, Kevin, is the first thing I want to say. That you just lit a fire underneath me in a good way.
Good.
There's a lot in that short presentation that sort of intrigues me, but the thing at the foremost of my mind is the voluntary aspect of it. So when you said, this talented individual decided to just pile into the project for fun, because they've got a bit of downtime. I think that's where the real magic happens, because and it made me think about my experiences, and you'll all have had this experience, I'm sure. It's the difference between being paid to do something and doing something because it's fun and because it ties into your personal mission, and the difference in motivation that you feel. And ever since I first learned the word open source, I was like, hang on a sec, I've got this amazing operating system that's better than Windows, that people have made for fun for no money, and there's something magical in that. And it's like, okay, so how do we harness that, and how do we, like Joe said, the NHS is full of brilliant people, like local government as well, all these organizations, civil service, they're all full of brilliant people, but how many of them look a bit dead inside?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I don't know, can I just push back on that slightly? Because there was a really interesting tweet, Fred, the other day, where a guy who worked, I can't remember his name, to be honest, this is embarrassing, but he does he's a consultant neurologist who's built his own EPR system. Joe, what's his name? Help me out.
Oh, he's up in Blackpool or somewhere.
Yeah, anyway, he's a cool guy, but he's obviously built, towards the end of the thread, he says, this can't be a hobby though, because we can't rely on this as a hobby, a hobby project, because then it will never take off. And where you've seen success in open source in the past is where there's been this kind of yin yang commercial open source ecosystem, where they assist each other. So most of our stuff is built in Ruby on Rails, which is a web framework, but Basecamp and Shopify all use that stack underneath them, and they have a commercial interest. I think if you follow David Heinemeier Hansen and Jason Fried, the guys behind Basecamp, they have a good ethos about it. It's not like they're doing it to enrich themselves, but it is supported because there is a commercial need. At the end of the day, Alex can't work on this project for free forever, and the greatest engineers, they've got mortgages. She's got a mortgage to pay, and she's got a family to feed. So
Kevin,
on the right, we've got a commercial stack, because it's got to be profitable, and you've got to have the whole shebang from top to bottom.
Yeah.
Go on, Joe. Sorry.
I was just going to say that it's true. I mean, we built Great North Care Records, 3.6 million records shared, used, 250,000 times a month, 4 staff, but a volunteer army of over 1,000. So you need both. You need some money to build and nurture a community, to pay people to build and nurture a community. But a lot of the goodwill that you then create will bring you your community of 1,000 people who are doing basically working for the project for nothing, and they do it for love and for recognition, and because they can see that it's the right thing. But you do need a core of people who are paid to nurture the community.
Yeah, I would also pick that up from a purely business perspective. If you're actually going to get people to adopt it, the really hard bit is getting the model right to support people, because genuinely every NHS trust does not want to just pick an open source product off the shelf. They kind of want open source and the support around it that makes it an enterprise grade application. So yes, we can do lots of stuff, but without some sort of commercial business model, you're not going to go anywhere. And I know there's projects with the MHCLG that have been funded, and they're all at this difficult stage now of, we got some great ideas and we've gone through an alpha and a beta, but we're now at that difficult point of going, where do we put this, and how do we put a sustainable business model around it that means other people can now adopt it? Because, you know, same as local gov, you've got a range of sizes, you've got a range of skills in various, you know, NHS and stuff like that. But how do you practically come up and make it viable for them to, you know, take that open source sort of step? And that's what's impressed me about your stuff is how much you're doing to make almost the open source bit is, don't worry about that. We got you covered. You know, what you're actually buying is a system. You know, it's not open source. That's the thing. You've got to have loads of developers in a room and support yourself, and away you go, you know, which is some of the open source models.
I think to the client, at the end of the day, they don't really care. You know, if it works, they don't really care if it's proprietary or open source, and I don't blame them for that. But the point I'm trying to make, I guess, to those groups is that the open source element of it is the right environment. That's the good pub. That is the good pub that invites in people with a good ethos and a good attitude to it. And I love your point, John. You know, it is when you realize something's been made out of love and purpose, and, you know, someone cares about something. That's you get that feeling, don't you, when you go into a restaurant or a pub or when we used to, damn it. But when you go into one of those places, you get a sense of how much that person cared about producing that thing for you, how much they enjoy that environment. You know, I was walking past a neighbour the other day who works in the local co-op. You know, I was going past her in the snow, walking the dog, and I said to her, you seem to really get on really well in that co-op, don't you? She said, yeah, it's a really good team. She said, I love going to work. And I thought, do you know what? That shows. It shows in everything that they do. Yeah, they're a business and they're trying to sell stuff. But when you walk in that shop, you know, from the moment you walk in, the people working in there care about each other, that they support their colleagues, and they're a tight-knit bunch. And I think building up this sort of open source community it's a means to an end, in a way. It's a means to get the sort of culture that you get, as Mark and Anastad said, where people have the drive and purpose and autonomy to bring things from the bottom up. So,
I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I spent the day vaccinating yesterday in a locally run vaccination centre, and on the way home, I cried. That community of vaccinators has grown out of nothing but goodwill, and it was emotional, and you don't often get that in an NHS IT space, where but if you could create that community spirit, then you can do things like vaccinate 20% of the population in a couple of weeks. It's been amazing.
I mean, another question popped into my head on this theme, because I'm a bit mad about all this culture stuff. I'm wondering if you could offer any advice to. I'm thinking back over my 20 years in transformation and all that stuff, and you know what? There were times in that 20 years where I didn't want to get out of the car and walk into the office, and there were other times where I kind of skipped in singing musicals, and I wonder, what would your advice be to people who were not wanting to get out of the car?
Is that to me? Or
Joe's the psychiatrist, to be fair. I feel like I might be misplaced, but I go on my take is that, I actually think, in terms of people's career choices, is far better. For a start, be the change you want to see, right? And I know that's hard when perhaps you're going into a place, but it is surprising how much you skipping into the office can start to turn things around for other people. there's a good book called Fuck You Very Much, which is by David, what's his name, the comedian. I think it's the guy who took the fridge around Ireland with him. Might be him. But he wrote a book about how rudeness is contagious. And I think this is true. You know, you go into a shop, someone's rude to you, and then you go out and it's a sort of karma effect. And I do think that there's an element of going in, you know, trying to lift the spirit yourself, even if it's just with a few people and them coming with you. But yeah, if it's if it's a company of 100 people and you're one man, I don't know. Maybe you can twist it around. But I do think in terms of your career choice, worry less about what job you're doing and try and find those good communities because they exist. There is a good co-op. You know, there's the bad supermarket to work in, and there's the co-op my friend works in, where people are supportive and they get on. So because they're the places where good things can happen. But go on, psychologist, psychiatrist. Sorry.
Yeah. Careful now. Do you know the difference between a psychiatrist and a psychologist,
No,
Kevin?
go on.
About 70 grand a year. In my favour. What I would say, we've all had that feeling where you're going into a job which you hate. I think the thing I would do is I'd go in and say, anybody else hate working here? And could we do something about it? You know, could we make it better? And if the answer's no, everyone else loves it, then you just leave.
I think there's always that element ultimately. If you're not, you know, if you're not fulfilled in the role that you're in, then it's probably time for you to make, you know, that choice and start to look for something that fulfills you. Yeah, it's a hard one in a big organization to turn the tide. I've always been lucky. You come in and work with small teams and you can turn the tide. You know, you can come in and go, right, you know, we're going to knock it out of the park today. Forget the rest of it. We know where we are. We know what we're doing. We'll keep going, you know, and you can build that siege mentality and really deliver. And people do. I'm mindful of the time, so I wanted to probably just wrap up here and say, first of all, massive thanks to Kevin. I've got some special effects to play in here because the only thing that's missing is obviously a little bit of applause for you there. So seriously,
it's been so long.
total thanks to you.
God, I miss that.
I know, it's something else, isn't it? But obviously, we haven't really mentioned the legacy suppliers that much and badmouthed them. But you know, It's always good to have them there.
Yeah.
But seriously, Kevin, thank you. That is always inspiring, and I'm really looking forward to talking about how we can develop communities and how we can start hacking some things and, you know, build this community and other communities for the good. Because I think it's important. You've mentioned it, you know, there are good guys out there, and, you know, the more people know of them and the more people work with them, the more we can start turning the tide on suppliers bad because we've been burnt before, and start to get into this relationship, because I'm sure you don't operate like a suppliers and users kind of relationship. It's much more about, hey, we're building something here. So
yeah,
I mean,
I joke around a lot, right? But I actually take this very seriously deep down. And I think what this has been missing for a while is someone to sort of come at it with a real, quite a commercial hard nose to say, I'm going to make this a success. And for us, it's actually in our interest, in our commercial interests, that this is a success. And I consider that a feature, not a bug. because
No.
we come at it as if we create this environment, then that is good for our company, and it allows our company to succeed and excel in an environment that's well suited to it. And in so doing, we create a good environment for companies like us to come along. And so with that mindset, I think there's a big drive, rather than, oh, let's just have a nice thing. It's let's have a nice thing, because when the nice thing comes along, my life's going to be easier, and it puts. Does that make sense? So that.
And I would absolutely always say commercial isn't a bad thing, mate. I actually think in this space, commercial is an incredibly good thing, because you will not get adoption without having a company that's built on a sound footing that can support and develop and nurture the community. You know, you just won't. People will still leach out to the old style systems that don't deliver that, the waterfall projects that take 2 years, and then what you get at the end of it didn't actually fit what you wanted 2 years ago, let alone now. So I'm going to say thank you. I think that's a brilliant note to end on, mate. And I am so pleased you did this, and sorry for the late notice.
No, it's good. I really admire what you're doing. I really admire the fact that you're putting this together. There's a lot of great people out there, you know, and you're one of them, trying to move things forward in the right direction.
Well, I'm just thinking about the Dancing Man video now, about when we get to that critical point of there being enough people dancing that people feel like they can just flock in, you know. And I think there's synergies across public sector, and you know, I specifically built this community to involve private sector as well, because I don't adopt that approach that private sector is bad. I think private sector's got a huge amount to offer in terms of advice and skills and things like that. So I think open community for all, just in the same way you're trying to create it around open source. And let's be honest, we're not really talking about open source. We're talking about better solutions and better services that can save lots of money and help us deal with, hopefully this crisis is gone at some point, but you know, it can help the NHS be a better model, because they're not sitting there with garbage systems anymore, and they've actually got something that helps them do the job.
Yeah, so, I can't resist coming in with another angle on this, just momentarily. Cool. I know we're trying to close, but I've got this theory that that stuff, thinking about procurement and taking a chance on exciting new open source companies and all of that stuff, I feel like this is a generational thing. So there's a certain generation of senior leader at the moment that is still wedded to the old solutions. And I just think that as that, you know, it sounds a bit brutal, doesn't it? But as that generation moves on and a new generation comes up, you know, the generation that's been playing with WordPress and Ubuntu and all that, you know, that's when we'll start to see a bit of, what's the word, you know, critical mass.
Yeah. Well, they say science progresses funeral by funeral, don't they? So, God, that's harsh.
No. As the only pensioner on the call, John Sagan.
Yeah.
All right. Is that a wrap, Andy?
That is a wrap. Thank you very much. We've got Kit Collingwood coming up next week from Greenwich. So we will be back next week. The video will be up at a point, as will all our videos. Everything's going to be open. Everyone's available, free at the point of delivery.
Nice.
Which is a bit of a dream. So thank you all for coming, and see you next time.
Yeah, cheers. Have a good weekend, everyone. Bye.